Let's talk about our kids and smoking. According to the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, 5 million kids that are alive today will die prematurely from smoking or smoking-related illnesses. Now, joining me now is the Vice President of Research for a group called CTFK. It's Danny McGoldrick, and you are with an advocate as well, Livia. Livia, good morning to you. Good morning to both of you. All right.
Morning,
hey,
Dan.
so, Livia, let me ask you first, since you're the person we're talking about and the kids and whatnot. At your age, are kids really, I mean, I don't see a lot of kids smoking around here, but I guess when do they start smoking and why are they smoking? I remember when I was a kid, it was thought to be cool. Is that still the reason?
So it's actually true that 90% of all smokers started smoking before their 18th birthday. So there's a high percentage of youth smoking, and it's not going to decline if we don't continue to fund tobacco control programs like the report states.
Yeah. Right. So do these programs really work? I'm just wondering if you get the message out there, and I guess certain programs are working better than others, but do they actually reach out and affect kids and affect them and stop them from smoking?
Most of the programs that I'm aware of are highly effective as long as they're adequately funded. So this funding is vital to ensure that the future generations don't begin to smoke as young as 10 or 12 or 15. And if these programs are adequately funded, I'm sure that that will be a reality in the future.
Well, you are quite the saleswoman. Let me tell you, I think the future of our country is in good hands as long as kids like you are around. So, Danny, what do you think?
Well, if Livia were making decisions about whether these programs were funded or not, we'd be in great shape. Unfortunately, we have another cast of characters doing that, and they're not doing such a good job.
Right.
The report that we're releasing today grades the states on whether they're keeping the promise of the tobacco settlement to spend some of those dollars to fund tobacco prevention programs that we do know work. The science is very clear on that. And what we find is that states across the country are failing our children and failing to keep that promise. California ranks 23rd in our report. Long a leader in fighting tobacco, the California Tobacco Prevention Program has been in place longer than most, if not all, and so we've had some success. But the program has eroded in funding to where California now spends just 17% of what the CDC recommends on tobacco prevention, despite taking in almost $2 billion every year from its tobacco settlement and tobacco tax.
Wait, so you're saying that the money is supposed to go for these programs, but they're spending it on other things?
Well, we heard a lot of promises about where it was going to go, but our legislators and our governors have just not kept that promise to protect our kids. And as Livia can tell you, the bad news is the tobacco companies haven't backed off at all, have they?
No. Actually, annually, the tobacco industry spends $13 billion on their marketing and advertising campaigns.
Yeah, that is a lot of money.
$25 for every $1 our states are spending to try to protect our kids. We're not going to win the battle that way. So our states really have to step up and fund these programs using, it doesn't even take but about 15% of all these dollars they're taking in to fund at the level recommended by the CDC.
Hey, listen.
Otherwise, we're going to have more kids smoking, more death and disease from tobacco use.
Wow. Hey, before I let you go, let me ask you, I'm sure you've seen the new plan by the FDA to put those really graphic pictures on the front of the cigarette packs. What do you think about those? Will they be effective from the young person's point of view?
I think so. There's been many studies that have stated that not only will it prevent youth from starting to smoke, it will help adults be motivated to smoke less often.
Yeah. What do you think, Dan? You think they're going to work?
Well, we're finally catching up with the rest of the world, and they do. The research shows consistently that they do a great job of educating smokers and youth about the dangers of smoking, but also motivating them to quit. But that's not the whole answer. I mean, $13 billion we're up against, so we've got to have larger graphic warnings on cigarette packs, but we have to fund these prevention programs that we know work. And in California, which has really fallen behind on its tobacco tax, an increase in that tobacco tax would not only increase price and therefore reduce smoking, particularly among our kids, but also produce new revenue which could be used to fund these prevention programs or other vital programs in the state. And California, like many others, is in a huge budget crisis.
Well, listen, you both keep up the battle. It's obviously a good fight. Livia and Danny, we appreciate your time here this morning. And it's the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. If you want to help out, check them out on the web. Thanks.
TobaccoFreeKids.org, Dan. Thanks.
There you go. Thanks to both of you.
The Great American Smokeout is just a day away, but the real trick is preventing kids from ever picking up the habit. That's the mission of my next guest, Danny McGoldrick, the Vice President of Research for Tobacco-Free Kids, and youth advocate Livia Clandorf. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, of course, we obviously want to talk Texas, since that's where we're based. And based on your findings, do you think the Lone Star State is doing enough to protect kids from tobacco? Because we find it a little appalling that Texas ranks 40th in the nation in funding tobacco prevention programs.
Right, Melissa. We're releasing our report today, grading the states on how well they're keeping the promise of that big tobacco settlement to spend some of those funds on prevention programs that we know work to reduce smoking, particularly among our kids. And unfortunately, like many of the states, Texas gets a failing grade, and worse than most states. Texas does rank 40th in our report this year and spends less than 5% of what the CDC recommends for tobacco prevention, despite taking in all this money from its tobacco settlement and tobacco tax. So we got to do a better job in Texas so young people like my friend Livia here can do the work that she does to educate her peers about tobacco use and keep those rates down.
Yeah, Livia, you are the age group that we are trying to target and trying to make these children realize that you really should never start because it's so hard to kick that habit. Do you find that prevention programs through your friends and different people that you talk to actually really make a difference?
I absolutely believe that they make a difference, and it's vital that we have these prevention programs because the tobacco industry spends $13 billion annually on their marketing and their advertising. So we need to have these prevention programs in place in order to combat all of that marketing.
Danny, what efforts are being made to pass tobacco taxes and smoke-free policies across the country?
Well, it's going to be a big effort in Texas this year to pass a statewide smoke-free law because, you know, everybody deserves the right to breathe clean air, free of the 4,000 chemicals, including over 60 carcinogens in secondhand smoke. So we'll see a big push there in Texas. So that's another thing, in addition to funding the prevention programs that Texas can do to create an environment that's less conducive to kids starting to smoke and also protect everybody from the harms of secondhand smoke. So we're looking for a big year in Texas. We need to step up that prevention funding and pass that statewide smoke-free law. And then tobacco taxes are another intervention that has worked in New York, where Livia is, has worked in Texas in the past, but will not only reduce smoking, particularly among kids, but produce important new revenue to fund these prevention programs as well as other needs in the state in these tough budget times.
In all of your research, have you figured out in the Lone Star State how many people are dying that are related to smoking?
Well, tobacco use remains the leading preventable cause of death in Texas and all over the country, killing over 400,000 Americans every single year. In Texas, 25,000 deaths related to tobacco use every year. You know, there's not much good news in that except for the fact that it's all completely preventable. But we have to do the things that the science tells us work. And we know these prevention and cessation programs do. These aren't just feel-good programs. It's a dose-response relationship. When we fund them, they work. But when we fail to fund them, we have more kids starting to smoke, fewer adults quitting, more tobacco-related health care costs, and, of course, the worst, more death and disease from tobacco use.
Well, Danny and Livia, thank you so much for getting the important word out there. Great to talk to you this morning. And we have a link to your website on myfoxhouston.com. You'll find it under the Scene on TV tab. We'll also have folks from the Harris County Hospital District to tell you about local cessation programs so you can stomp out that habit coming up later in the hour.